Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with lesson number 15 in our incredible tutorial series where you're going to learn Python or you're going to die trying. What I'm going to need you to do is pour yourself a nice big cup of strong coffee. That is straight up black coffee, hot, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. You guys have got to understand, you're jet fighter aircrafts, and this is your jet fuel. If you don't have your jet fuel, run get it. It is caffeine that fuels the world of engineering. I am also going to need you to fire up your most excellent Visual Studio Code. And as you are calling up Visual Studio Code, as always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over at Patreon. Your help and your encouragement keeps this great content coming. You guys that are not helping out yet, look down in the description. There is a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping on over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's talk about what we are going to learn today. And what we are going to do is we are going to look at the solution to the homework that I gave you in lesson 14. I need you to take a second and leave a comment down below. Are you legend? Did you get the homework done? Or did you fold up like a cheap Walmart lawn chair? Let me know, was anyone able to do this? Okay guys, the thing that I really need you to do, I need you to do your best to think through this and try and fail and stumble and wander around trying to do the homework, because then even if you weren't able to do it, when you watch me do it, it'll make sense and you'll really learn, because you'll see how I handled the things that you were struggling with. Okay, so the problem is if you just sit and watch me code, it looks easy and you think you understand it, but then when you try to do something that you're not watching me do, you see you really don't know what's going on. So what I need you to do is go through that learning process, go through that stumbling process, go through that valley of death process where you're trying to figure things out, and then you will in fact really learn to be a coder. So we're going to come over here and we're going to click on the File Explorer, and then we are going to come to our most excellent Python files. Click New File, and we are going to call this Pickle Homework, Pickle HW, and then .py. Remember, don't put spaces in file names. That's poor habit, poor form, and the .py is sort of important. So we're going to do that, and boom, we have a fresh new Python program just waiting to be written, and that's what we're going to do, buddy. We are going to write this program. Okay, so what was the homework that I gave you? You were to ask the user how many students he had, and then you were to ask the user for the name of the student and that student's average, the name of the student and that student's average. And so go through, create two arrays, and then pickle them. That's going to be program number one. And then program number two is going to pull that up and then print it out. Okay, it's going to pull it up and it's going to print it out, where basically in the second program, I think what I'd said in the second program, what I'd said was that you were going to ask, after you pull it up, after you pull the data sets up, you're going to ask the user for a name, and then it's going to look that name up and tell you that person's name and that person's grade. So you can interact then with the program in the second program to find out whose grade is who. Hope that makes sense. All right. So this first program, I think maybe I should rename this. I'm going to rename it homework and then -1, and then the next one will be the second program. And you see, instead of a space, I put a dash there. Again, don't put spaces in file names. All right, so we are going to be pickling. So the first thing we need to do is import the old pickle, and make sure you spell it right. Okay, import pickle, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to have two arrays, right? We're going to have names, and so we need to make that a blank array. So we're starting with a blank array, and then grades. And right, you're sort of the grade average. Each person will have one number, and that is their average. Okay, so I've got an array names, I've got an array grades, and then let's see, what do we need to do? We need to figure out how many grades there are. Who knows? The user, so we need to get it from him. So I'm going to say num, it's not num grades, it's num people. How about num students? And that is going to be equal to, you're always going to have a round number of students, so it would be an int. And then we're going to input, and how many students do you have? Question mark and a space so that it'll look nicely. Now we need to come over here, and I need to remember to close this so you'll have a bigger view. And then we close the string with a single quote, we close the input with the parentheses, and we close the int with a parentheses. So one of the biggest problems you have in coding, one of the biggest bugs and errors, is not having your quotes and parentheses and so forth balanced. All right, so now we know how many, so what do we need to do? We need to input them. So we're going to say from, no, we're not going to say from, we're going to say for, and we can just say j in range. And then where do we want to start? We want to start with student number 0. And so we would want to stop one less than the number of students, because it's like if we're starting at 0 instead of 1, we have to stop 1 before number of students so that all the number of students are in there. I've talked about this ad nauseum in earlier lessons, and so hopefully you understand that, right? Well, the good thing is students, the good thing is that this range will stop 1 student before num students, and therefore since we're starting at 0, we'll get them all in, and then we're going to start with a 1. We're going to increment by 1, and then we're going to put our friend Mr. Colon. Who's your friend? Mr. Colon is your friend. All right, now what are we going to do? We are going to input the data. So I'm just going to say name singular is equal to input, and then we're going to be polite. We're going to say please input, please, I'm going to say please enter student name, and then I will put a colon and a space, right? And then I am going to append that to what? To my names, right? To my names array. So names is the array I'm going to append to, dot append. And then what am I going to append? That name I just input. All right, so now I should have the name in there. And then I'm going to input the grade, okay? And so I'm going to say grade is equal to input. And this would be a string. Ooh, let's see. No, this will be a float. Float. All right. And then I'm going to say input. Please enter grade. You know, I really shouldn't try to get fancy on the fly, but I think I'm going to try to get fancy on the fly. And here I'm going to say the prompt, P-R-O-M-P-T, prompt is equal to, and I'm going to say please enter, and then I'm going to say plus, and then I'm going to say name, and then I'm going to say plus, and then I'm going to put I want to put apostrophe s. Let's see if I can get really fancy. If I put the double quote, if it'll then make if this then becomes an apostrophe. In some languages this will work, and in other ones it will be confused. But I want to say please enter Jill's, and then grade. Okay, and then if that doesn't work, we'll have to come back and not make it so snazzy. Okay, and then here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to input, I'm just going to put out the prompt. Now notice guys, because this is a variable, I don't put quotes around it. I don't want to put out the string prompt. I want to print the variable and what's contained in that variable. All right, and then we should be able to close that. And then what do I want to do with that grade? I want to append it to grades. So I put it in the array, and then what am I going to append? I am going to append grade. All right, now one thing that you need to kind of see here is what you got to see is that grade is just a single number and grades is the array. And so I've got to build that grades array as I go, and I do that by appending that single last grade. Okay, and so now let's just see if this thing crashes. I want to just see if it crashes because I was getting kind of fancy there with my prompt. And I think you've been able to see everything there so far. I certainly hope so. Let's go ahead and run this thing. Okay, how many students do you have? I have 3. Okay, and please enter the student name. I think you can see that. I hope you guys can read this. Okay, please enter the student name. Let's say Tom. Okay, and then please enter Tom's grade. Okay, that looks pretty good. That actually kind of worked. Let's say a 34. Tom's had a bad day. Okay, so 2 things I need to do is I need to put a space after grade, and then it said please enter, and then I need to put a space there because it kind of was running things together. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kill that and get back here to coding. And so when I get done with this, I think that I should have an array. Okay, I think that I should have an array. Did you see that little trick I did? Normally you put strings inside of single quotes, but what if you want an apostrophe in your string? Well, then it would read that as end of string. So you start the string with a quote, with a double quote, and then you end it with a double quote, and then it treats a single quote inside of that as the old apostrophe. Little pro tip there. You guys are learning so much here. You are learning so much. All right, so now we should have all of that in there. And so what do I want to do? I want to pickle it. So I am going to say with, and then open, and then what do? I'm going to have student data.pkl. And then how do I want to open it? I want to open it as a right binary, like that. And then I'm going to open it as, I just want to say like data file, like data F, just because I want you to see that you can name this object whatever you want. So I'm going to call it data F. And what did I forget? I forgot my colon, my friend Mr. Colon. And then what I'm going to do, pickle.dump. Now, you got to think, life's going to be a lot easier when you go to read the names in, when you go to play with your arrays in the next program, if you know how many grades, how big the array is. So let's go ahead and pickle that. And that is pickle dump. And what is that? That is num students. And then that is going to go to data F. All right, and now we're just going to copy this and paste it twice. This is makes things a lot faster. So now I'm going to Control V, and I'm going to Control V unless you have an error, and then you're just copying and pasting your error. So I'm going to dump num students. I am going to dump names, and then I am going to dump grades. Okay, and let's just take a second here. Yeah, it's names plural, grades plural, names, grades, all lowercase. Okay, so that should dump that file in there, and now let's just make sure that that worked. So I'm going to say with open, and what do I think, watch this, another pro tip here. We're on a roll, so we're going to copy that. Control C, we're going to come down here, Control V, and so now I'm going to open it, but now I'm going to open it as read. Okay, I am going to open it as read. All right. Okay, and then let's just call it something else. Let's call it read F. All right, we're going to read F. Okay, so then what do I do here? I am going to say A is equal to pickle.load of, what am I going to load? Read F. Okay, And I'm just using a different variable name to make sure that I'm actually dumping it and reading it. If I use the same variable name, maybe it never went anywhere and it just remembered from before. Okay, and then B is equal to pickle.load, and again read F. Okay, and then let's do the C just by copying and pasting, Control. All right, so now it is going to input number of grades, the person's name, and the grade, and then it is going to pickle them, and then it's going to read it from the pickle, and then we're going to come down here and let's just say print. I'm not going to do any fancy formatting. I'm just seeing if I got the data in. Okay, print B. Did you guys catch that? I almost made a mistake. When you copy and paste, you got to make sure you change what needs to be changed. So that C is equal to pickle load, and then print C. All right. Are we ready to run this thing? Okay. Take some of your jet rocket fuel. Hold your breath. All right, how many students do you have? I am going to say that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 students. All right, and please enter the student name, Tom. Okay, Tom. What is Tom's grade? Look at that nice formatting. Pretty good, huh? Okay, please enter Tom's grade. I think Tom has a 96. And then please enter student name, Jim. Jim had a bad day. He had an 85. And then please enter student name, Susie. And Susie's grade is a 97 because girls almost always do better than boys on most things. Okay, and that was Susie. And then Anne. Anne had a 92. And then Joe. And Joe had an 82. And then Andy. And Andy had a 74. And then Rita. And Rita had an 85. And then bringing up the rear is Sharon. Okay. And Sharon had a 99. Okay. Boom! Do you see that? Who's your Huckleberry? What did we do? We input the data and we pickled it. Okay, so now we have the data. We have a program. We got a program that will input the data from the user and we'll throw it to the file in a nice organized way. So what do we have to do now is we have to write the other half of the program. And so what I am going to do is I am going to come over here, and I think, is there anything that I really need to do here? I'm just going to start from scratch. So I will come over here and I will save this program. Okay, plus we've already run it, so we already have a data set in there, right? We already have a data set in there. So now we are going to come here in Python files, and now we will create a new one, and this one is going to be called pickle homework-2.py. Boom! Fresh new Python program sitting there ready to be written. Okay, so let's see what we're going to need to do. Well, we're going to have to, because we're going to be unpickling, we're going to have to import the old pickle. All right. Now, I think that we're just going to read those things in there. I think we're going to read those things in there. And so we're going to go ahead and say with open. And then what are we going to open? It's kind of nice. You can see it over here. Okay. And that is studentdata.pkl. And then I do, in fact, need a quote, single quote around that. Okay. And then it is going to be, and since I'm going to be reading it, I'm going to read binary RB. And then our friend, Mr. Colon, our good old dear friend, Mr. Colon. And then we're going to close that so that you can see things better. Okay, so now we're opening that file up, and we forgot, what did we forget? As, and then what? I'll just put DF for data file. All right, that turned a color though. Beware when it turns a color, because that might mean that it's trying to make it a command, or that's a reserved word. And so I will say data F. All right. I don't know what DF is, but if we'd done that, it would have gone crazy. So if something lights up when you don't expect it to, you might be using a reserved word. Again, a pro tip there. Okay, so now what do we need to do? We need to read in num students is equal to pickle dot load. And what are we going to load it from? Data F. All right. And then we're going to read names. Now I'm kind of using that same variable names that I did before, just because it's useful. You don't have to. You could make it anything that you want it to. So names is going to be equal to pickle dot load data F, and then we are going to say grades equal pickle dot load data F. All right, so that looks good. Now let's just see if we were able to read it in. So we're just going to say print num students and okay, print num students, print names, and then print grades. All right, let's just try running this. Having a little jet fuel here. Keep the old jet engine running, you know. All right, so here we go. And let's see, did that run? Okay, so let's try this. Boom! See that? Who's your huckleberry? I'm your huckleberry. Look at that. Okay, so we got the data over here and input into a new program. But remember what we wanted to do? We wanted to look up someone's grade. All right, now remember how we learned a while loop? Now I'm going to kind of show you one of the things that you can do with a while loop. Like every time you want to check a student's grade, you don't want to have to run the program again. So what we can do is kind of like, remember in Arduino we had that void loop? Well, we want something like a void loop, and we can create that with a while statement. And so this would be while, let's say, while 1 equal 1. When is 1 going to equal 1? 1's always going to equal 1, so this is going to run forever. And so then here what we are going to say is we are going to say please, or we're going to say name is equal to input, and the name is going to be a string. Okay, I had to think a little bit. So we're going to figure out whose grade do we want to look up. So we got to know who they are. So we're going to say name is equal to input. Which student do you want to check? All right, like that. Which student do you want to check? All right. Guys, I just struggle between making it nice where you can see it and then being in front of it, so I guess I'll get a little smaller. Right, I feel awkward being that tiny. I feel like I'm a little munchkin or something. Okay, so now what do we want to do? Well, we want to look through the list and we want to find who. We want to find name. Okay, so I said name is equal to input. That's good. All right, so now I need to say for, and let's just say I in range, and I want to step through that whole list. Okay, and so I want to step through that whole list, and so I would start where? Well, we are programmers, so we better start at 0. So I want to go from range to num students. Okay, from range is start at 0, go to num students in increments of 1. So remember, the array starts at position 0, so we need to start at position 0, right? And then we need to stop 1 before num students, but that's what the range function does. And so this should, I do believe this should step through the whole list. Okay, And now what we want to do is we want to say if names of what? I, right? So we've got the names array. We want to say if names of I is equal to name, right? So who are we looking for? We're looking for name in the list names of I. So if names of I is equal to name, then what do we want to do? Well, we want to do several things. We want to say, we want to print his grades. And so we would say print, and then we would say name, comma, and then we're going to use the double quote, and then we're going to say apostrophe S. So with the double quote, I can put the apostrophe S. So if we look up Joe, when it finds Joe, it's going to say Joe's space grade is space, and then comma, what is his grade? Well, if I put them in order, which I did, if Joe is the first person on the list, then I want to print the first grade on the grade list. If Joe is the fourth person on the list, I want to print the fourth number off the other list. So you see those two lists are synchronized, and so I could say what is his grade going to be? It is going to be grades of that was a rookie mistake, grades of I. And then let's be even super good, and let's put a period at the end of that. Man, what is the chance of this working? All right, so, and then it'll drop out of the if statement, then it'll come back and ask you for another student, if I am not crazy. Could it really be this easy? I ask you, could it really be this easy? All right, I got too big there. All right, let's go back, have a sip of our jet fighter fuel. I'm a little afraid of this one. I am a little afraid of this one. So I'm going to need everyone to hold their breath. Oh, if names of I, oh man, rookie mistake. Rookie mistake. What do we do when we're doing a conditional equal equal? All right. And also, just for good measure, I really like to put the conditional inside of a parenthesis like that. All right, let's try it again. Ooh, doesn't like it again. Oh, I forgot the comma, right? When I'm stringing these things together, the things between, like I'm printing different things, I need a comma between them. All right, one more time. Someone out there is not holding their breath. Someone out there is not holding their breath. I need everyone this time. Whoever you were that weren't holding your breath, you know who you were. I need you to hold your breath this time. Okay, which student do you want to check? Well, I think that I will check Anne. Oh, it says if names is equal, list object is not callable. Oh, man, look at this. What did I do? I hope you guys were yelling at me. You don't index an array with parentheses, it's square brackets. I almost did the same thing on grades. If you're calling a function like print, you use the parentheses, but if you're indexing an array, it's always the square bracket. All right, you guys are trying to blame me for that, but there's still one guy who is not holding his breath. This time, that one last guy, you have got to hold your breath. Let me... Boom! Do you see that? Who's your huckleberry, huh? Look at that. Anne's great. Now, what's the one thing that we don't like very much? Somehow I end up with a space there, and I don't know why I have a space there, but that is not very good. So you say Anne's grade, name, apostrophe S. So maybe it is just putting a space there, but let me go ahead and try another one. Let me try Tom. Okay, Tom's grade is 96. So it is putting a space in there. So I would have to go around and kind of figure out how to clean that up. I don't know when it's saving it, if it's adding a space to it or not. But anyway, we could clean that up at some later point. Oh, and it seems to be putting a a space after the number. So it seems to, when I have a comma, it seems to be inserting spaces. And so, all right, I hate to do things like this on the fly, but let me just see if I made this a string. I'm going to string name. And then instead of adding it to that, I'm going to concatenate it. So I take a string plus a string, and I'm making a bigger string. Does that make sense? And let's see here, then I would take this out and I would concatenate it with, and then I'm going to string, grades of I. And then I'm going to concatenate that with the period. All right, let's try that. I am probably getting a little bit too fancy here to be trying to do this on the fly, but let's see. Okay, which grade do you want to check? Let's try Susie. Okay, Susie's grade is 97. Boom, nicely formatted. It's the jet fuel. It is the jet fuel. And finally, you guys were holding your breath. Don't do that to me in the future. You guys need to hold your breath when I'm running these programs. Okay, let's see if it will work. So I'm going to say Tom. Tom's grade is 96. Jim's grade is 85. Susie's grade is 97. Ann's grade is 92. Joe's grade is 82. And then Andy's grade is 74. Rita. Okay, as you see, it didn't find it. I misspelled it, but it didn't crash. It just didn't find it, so I didn't get anything. So I'll try again. Rita's grade is 85. And then the most excellent, Sharon, of course, has a 99. Okay, guys, well, this has been kind of a fun program. Were you guys able to do it? Do you see how easy it was once you saw me do it? But I want you to think about it. I want you to learn to think the way I'm thinking, okay? I want you to see that you got to think through these things and you got to kind of have a strategy to do these programs. But I thought this was just super cool. So I'm trying to think, what are we going to learn next week? All right. I can't promise you this for sure, but I think you're ready to start learning things like functions, methods, and classes. And guys, it's really pretty simple, but if you're ever just kind of like a normal everyday programmer and you look at Python code, there is all this define int dot self class boop boop boop. There's just all this gibberish that makes no sense. I'm going to go in and explain it, and the good thing is then you'll be able to program like a real Python coder. And the other good thing is then when you're looking at other people's code, because a lot of the real masters at Python program with classes and methods and functions, when you look at their code, at least it'll start making sense. You'll understand what all this self business is and what all this class business is. And it really is pretty straightforward. If you've made it this far, you're going to have no problem with those future lessons. Okay, guys, man, I hope you're having as much fun watching these videos as I am making them. I just really love it. I love getting comments down below. I read every single comment that you guys put in. I can't answer every single one, but I read every single one. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. When you do, make sure you ring that bell so that you'll get notifications when my future lessons come out. And think about sharing this on your social media. Let's see if we can get some more people having fun like we are with coding. Okay, this is Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.